Nintendo has been slowly creeping into the mobile market with some game releases, but a recent patent seems to indicate that they might be looking to get in even further in a very interesting way. What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Meek, the Uber Geek. Welcome to Pretty Dece, your daily entertainment and pop culture show. And patents are often a very fun source of video game pre-knowledge. They sometimes are just ideas that companies have that never actually come to fruition, devices that don't ever get made, weird game ideas that never actually end up happening. But sometimes they are sort of the first indication of an entirely new device, an entirely new thing coming from a company before the company really has anything to actually say publicly about that item. So hopefully the thing that I'm talking about here today is that this is the first sort of indication of something that will actually come out and be usable in the public. Basically what this is a phone case that turns your phone into a Game Boy. This was a patent that Nintendo filed last week. Basically, of course, it has a lot of diagrams and descriptions of what's going to happen, but it basically works like this. It's a phone case that works like one of those folio phone cases that has a cover that closes over the front of your phone, kind of closes it like a book. However, instead of just being kind of flat on the front, it has a section that is see-through. You can see your phone's screen through it at the top, and then at the bottom, the important part, it has buttons. Buttons in a very familiar Game Boy layout. There's a D-pad, there are two kind of main input buttons that would be your A and B buttons, and then two kind of long buttons that would be your start and select at the bottom. It's the exact layout you would need for Game Boy or NES, and the actual entire setup with the screen at the top looks strikingly like a Game Boy. So very, very cool stuff. The idea here is that these buttons, they're not actually like plugging into your phone in any way. The back of them would be capacitive. So when you press one of the buttons on the folio case, it's as if you touched the screen with your finger. So you know, it really makes a lot of sense when you think about it, and it is this kind of low-tech solution to a problem that has plagued phones and porting existing games over to the phone for a long time, is how do you map over that control scheme? We've seen a lot of companies put out games like Sega, for example, put out some really great games on phones, but without those phones having a D-pad, without those phones having buttons, you kind of have a subpar experience. Yes, you can get the experience of playing those games, you can see them, you can hear the music, but it's just not really the same with the on-screen virtual D-pad and buttons. Some companies have put out devices kind of similar to this already. There was one that I used years ago that was basically a little suction cup joystick that you could put on the screen over top of the virtual joystick and kind of fling it around, and it gave you a little bit of feedback like an actual joystick would. That worked fairly well, but we've never seen anything like this where a company like Nintendo has gotten behind it. So obviously the idea here, if Nintendo actually does produce this item, is that it would come along with a potentially virtual console of sorts for mobile phones. You'd boot it up, it would fill the little screen on the front of your phone case perfectly, the correct size for your Game Boy or NES games, and it would know to look for inputs at the exact points on the screen where those buttons line up on the phone case. Very cool stuff, and it could be something very similar to we have on the Switch right now with the NES games they are giving away when you sign up for Nintendo Switch Online. It could have a very similar interface and kind of have a nice little beautiful package essentially for some ROMs for these systems. That's something that I think people would absolutely lose their minds over, you know, like with people having kind of a nostalgia trip to the max right now with the classic consoles that are coming out. Being able to play some of those things on your phone in a really cool, interesting way, I think people would be very into. I think even more than playing the games, I think people would be into owning this phone case just because it would probably look pretty cool. Looks like you're carrying around a little Game Boy in your pocket. You'll have working little Game Boy buttons. Knowing Nintendo, of course, the rest of the phone case would be styled like a Game Boy as well, and it would be a really cool kind of total package. So, lots of really cool stuff there. I'm excited about the possibility that this might actually happen. Obviously, porting this over to Android is a bit more complicated because there's a lot more phones you would have to handle for an Android phone case and a lot of different size configurations. On iOS, there's less of that. You have to support a few different, generations of iPhones potentially, a couple different sizes, but it seems a lot more manageable on the iOS side. But, it doesn't seem that far out of the realm of possibility. So will it work? Will the buttons be effective? Will it feel like controlling an actual Game Boy? Who knows? Will Nintendo actually make this? Who knows? But the patent certainly indicates that it's something that they are considering. So that's going to do it for Pretty Dece for today. Thank you very much for joining me to talk about this awesome Game Boy phone case. If you think that sounds like a cool idea, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can support Pretty Dece if you would like to do so. Visit prettydeceshow.com/listener support to find out those details. Of course, you can download the show in podcast form from your favorite podcast delivery platform, or watch the show on YouTube. Just visit youtube.com/prettydece to find the channel. And finally, follow me on social media. Hit me up and let me know what you think about this phone case. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @PrettyDeceShow.